Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have Tara Reade with us tonight. We're going to talk about what's going on with RT America. Tara, how are you doing?
These are tough times, I think, for everybody. Yeah, it's been kind of a wild day too. So kind of a somber time for everyone. And I'm so glad to have, to be on your show. And by the way, your theme music, I love it. I have to tell you, I just love it.
Oh, thank you. Jesse Jett made that song.
Jesse Jett did my song too for my podcast. He's so talented.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Good. I didn't know that we had that in common. All right.
So I heard about this a couple of days ago when I found it to be quite concerning. What exactly happened at RT America?
Well, I didn't work for RT America. I work for RT International when I submit my op-ed. So you have RT International, which is more the, in Europe and in Russia and whatnot. And then you have RT America, which is based out of Washington, D.C. So you had people like Lee Camp, Chris Hedges, people that had their shows there, and some of our great, hosts, television journalist hosts that were there in DC. So they all lost their job within one day. The same day that RT America shut down, I was told that my podcast was being shelved. And my podcast is The Politics of Survival. So I'll be doing that now independently for now. So, please go to my YouTube channel. I'm soon to be on Odyssey. I just got accepted. So you can follow me there if YouTube takes me down. And I have a Patreon. Many of us, like Lee Camp, I would encourage you to go support him. Caleb Malpen, go support him. He was another host of RT America, but it was very sudden. It was due to the censorship. And I don't know, Sabby, if you're aware, but the State Department issued a 33-page report on Sputnik and RT in January 22nd to be exact. And that 33-page report said that they were propaganda and disinformation. And so I had a bad feeling something was happening when I saw that from the State Department, and it's available online for anyone to read. And the stories that they cited as disinformation were actually stories that are valid and were done by other outlets. So it was really confusing to me to see that. It's obviously a suppression. It kind of goes along with this theory that I have, and it's my opinion, that we're in an information war. We're being, censored. Voices are being censored that are pushing up against the Western Empire. RT treated me very well. I never had any problems. All the op-eds were my own idea. I would submit them and they would accept them or not. My podcast was completely creatively my choice of guests, my ideas. They helped with the technical aspects, which I don't know how to do. And, it's just really shocking the way they were just suddenly suppressed and shut down and erased from NATO countries as well as America. And I think we're all losing when we don't hear another voice in international media. I think it's a loss for everyone.
Agreed. And I actually found out earlier today that some independent media platforms have been removed from Discord.
Really?
Yes.
I had understood Convo Couch was one, right?
Convo Couch, Indie Left News, and Reef, which is interesting. I'm not sure why Reef's account was removed. I guess maybe because he manages other Discord groups for shows. I'm not really sure, but Discord issued a statement similar to the one that people have received on YouTube when they take down a video, just basically saying misinformation. It didn't point to what the actual the comment was that caused them to pull it down. So I know right now, like, we're in a DM group and they're trying to figure out like if they can even get their account back. So
yeah, and then you heard about the Hill TV. They got banned from YouTube for a week for just mentioning. That was, Kim Everson, I believe, and Ryan Grimm. This is really concerning because what that allows the government to do is literally siphon and control information and only allow people to see what they want them to see. It's very dangerous that these corporations like Facebook or these platforms or Spotify that took they removed my podcast. They also removed Lee Camp's with by the way, with no explanation and no prior notice. They just removed my podcast from the line. Yeah.
So Spotify also.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you can find me on other platforms. You can find RT on Odyssey. You can find RT in other ways, but even Telegram, they just took RT off Telegram. You have to try to find Mirror. So it's been very hard because there's not been a lot of explanations other than just what you're hearing. And, I just want to say this. People are dying, right? This is horrible what's happening. People are dying as we speak in a very complex situation where, a military action is being taken in Ukraine. I would argue, and I have made this very clear, that I believe the US and the UK pushed this agenda to cut diplomatic ties with Russia. And there was a lot of disinformation around what's actually happening. In 2014, there was a coup. It's been widely covered. It was exposed by WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. It was an American-backed coup. All Russia has said, and what I have read publicly with everyone else, if you can get the information, is they want Ukraine neutral. Do I think people should be dying? No. Do I think there should be a war? No. But what's happening Sabby, that's really concerning me right this minute. Last night, I was looking around at Western outlets. They are casually talking about going into a no-fly zone. And I don't think people know what that means. But a no-fly zone means we would enter with NATO-backed countries from Poland or wherever to engage with Russians. In other words, shoot down their planes. And that would mean direct confrontation with Russia. And that could escalate to a nuclear war. And people literally are tweeting at me saying, like, I got a tweet yesterday that said, from someone random, so it wasn't important, but the tone of it was really sobering. It said, World War III is coming, you're on the wrong side of it. And I just want to say to everyone, there is no right or wrong side. There's no side, because no one will win. No one. And I really feel the Western media, corporate media, is escalating the rhetoric to a point that's dangerous. We are in a very dangerous moment in history. And people need to take this seriously when they're tweeting. They need to think about it before they do it. This isn't about supporting Biden or supporting Putin or taking sides. This isn't a fucking football game. Excuse me for saying that. But this is our lives. This could lead, if we have a war, an engagement of this kind with NATO and America against Russia and some of the East, I mean, besides escalating to nuclear war, just the damage that could be done economically will last for generations. It will bring ruin. And I have been saying for 2 years, more than 2 years, that the people around Joe Biden want war with Russia. I was predicting this 2 years ago, and here we are. And I know everyone feels kind of helpless, but you need to demand diplomacy because they keep shutting down diplomacy. And Russia's demands are not unreasonable. They're really not. So let's hope for peace. I
actually had a couple of students, well, former students that are from Russia. They did not stay in the United States after they graduated. Most of them usually go back home. They want to stay back home. And I was trying to find a way to get back in touch with them to see if they're even okay. And I can't even do that now. Like this is how far like the censorship has gone, you guys.
You mean you can't reach them on regular apps? You can't reach them on regular communication apps?
Right. Right. And I thought Telegram was always like my backup. Like if anything goes wrong with one of these other platforms, at least, we can count on Telegram. But now I'm hearing Telegram too. Seems like it has been also compromised.
Yeah, I don't understand the censorship. I don't understand why we talk about democracy and freedom and then take it away. frankly, I don't believe we're in a democracy. I think we're being controlled by major corporations that are deciding. I had said, and I think this, I had talked about how this is a war about who's going to control the oil and gas in Europe. Yep. And guess what just happened today? What happened, right? We cut off Russia's oil and gas. And I think it was Jackson Hinkle posted from Los Angeles or down in Southern California where he's at, $7 a gallon.
Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, it's going to get higher. This was before they cut that off. Like, I don't think people understand that we're heading towards economic disaster and possible nuclear war. I mean, this is where Joe Biden's taken us.
Exactly. And I also noticed this too, and people need to really like pay attention to what's going on, because I saw, and I'm like, look out for this week. I saw that Joe Biden is supposed to sign an executive order this week to regulate crypto.
Yes. Yeah. And that's all getting lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of crypto was to be unregulated, and I'm not really savvy enough with crypto to talk about it intelligently. But what I can say is that the whole point was to get it away from these centralized banks that were controlling currency. So,
yeah.
So
this is crazy. I want to get into this article because I want people to see what's happening here. And this is in reference to RT. So everyone pay close attention to this. I'm just gonna move this over to my other screen. Or I guess I could share it here still. So listen to this. RT America ceases production and lays off most of its staff. So I want people to keep in mind here, people have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I don't know where people are going to go because mainstream media is not going to take them with the talking points that they have. So people have lost their jobs. And Joe Biden was just bragging about the unemployment rate a couple of days ago. So I'll scroll down here. Yeah, that's laughable. RT America will cease productions and lay off most of its staff, according to a memo CNN obtained from T&R Productions, the production company behind the Russian state-funded network. So it goes on to say, unfortunately, we anticipate this layoff will be permanent, meaning that this will result in the permanent separation from employment of most T&R employees at all locations. So it says that T&R Productions operated offices in New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. The news would mean an effective end to RT America, the network, one of Russian President Vladimir Putin, main mouthpieces in the United States, was dropped earlier this week by DirecTV, dealing a major financial blow to it. The satellite carrier was one of the two major television providers in the U.S. to carry the network. And I'm going to come out here. So this is a big problem. This is a big problem. Like, I don't know, Spotify, that one's really interesting though, because remember, Spotify said that they were going to stand by Joe Rogan. They were not going to take him down, but they just took down Tara's show and Lee Camp's show. Right.
Yep. And Twitter is labeling some of my colleagues like Caleb Maupin, like some of the others that were hosts at RT America, as Russian state affiliated media and on their personal. Now these are, and their personal accounts say my opinions are my own. They don't, whatever. They haven't done that to me because I was a freelancer. So in other words, I did what writers do. You submit your work and then it's accepted or not. Right. So that was kind of my thing. And then of course I did lose the podcast, which is huge. And I'm trying to figure that out. And I'm having to learn tech real quick, which, you know what I mean? I don't know how to do all that, like how to get things on platforms. And then, it's just been an interesting time, but I think that the silencing of voices is so wrong. Labeling people, like these people were given a day's notice, if that, that they lost their jobs, and now they're labeled. So if they try to apply, they have the label of Russian state affiliated media. So it's sort of like branding them. And I saw a bunch of nasty little remarks underneath their comments saying, well, keep that label there, and I don't know. what I want to, even if you don't agree with anything about RT or anything, you know, that I have to say or Sabrina has to say or whatever, but I want to say to listeners, if you don't think that this is going to affect you directly someday, you're wrong. It's going to affect everyone. If we take away freedom of press, if we take away freedom of speech, we lose who we are, you know, as a people, as a citizen of our country. This is very serious.
And I want to say, for some of the people that were attacking the Assange activists on Twitter, because they say they get tired of hearing about Julian Assange. Now do you see? Now do you see like what the fight was really all about? Because this is a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like who's next? And it's
okay.
ridiculous.
And listen to this. This is so interesting, Sabrina. People will see the thing about the biological weapons, right? There were 30 biological labs in Ukraine that had diseases like the plague, diseases like, you know, really serious diseases in these labs. Okay. This was funded, US funded, and there's paperwork to prove it. So initially earlier this week, they called that Russian disinformation, and then they called it a QAnon, right? Today, Victoria Nuland is testifying, admitting that those biological labs exist. And then Rubio helped her dance around, they don't want to call it biological warfare because that's a war crime. If the US engaged in that, it's a war crime. If they were planning to do something with Russia or with one of those independent regions. And who knows? We don't know. But what begs the question, and this is what I'd like to put out there for any true investigative reporter, did Putin go in to help those independent regions to save them from a massacre? I mean, did he go in there with a preventive measure? We will never know because we can't hear, because our Western media won't allow it. Now, I don't agree with people getting bombed and civilians. I don't. So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I want to know what's really happening, and I feel like we don't. So, you know, and I feel like it's lost. So Glenn Greenwald, if you go to his Twitter account, he just posted the hearing where Victoria Nuland talks about it and now blames Russia for the and earlier this week they said it was a QAnon theory. So I don't and what do we do, Sabrina? I'm not an investigative reporter. I'm a writer, right? We need real investigative reporters on this. And will they even be allowed to report it?
This is absolutely terrible. Like this is why I tell you guys to make sure you follow us on other platforms. So if you follow me here, follow me on Rockfin. It's the same. They're the same live streams. Like I recommend some people get onto Rumble. Like we're going to have to find like other outlets, and we don't know what's going to happen with YouTube either.
No. I mean, I'm trying to work on Rockfin. I'll get on Rumble. I'm not on there yet. I am on Odyssey, but you know, it takes time. And then and people get a little impatient because they don't want to like have to search for you. Someone said they can't find my YouTube channel. Like I have a YouTube channel and I put a Patreon on it and people can't find it. And I keep posting it. And, you know, it's crazy what's happening, the deplatforming. So we just have to keep in communication and keep trying. And, you know, I just guess we just keep trying to get our voices heard, but like, listen to Katie Halper's show, listen to Matt Taibbi, to Aaron Mate, to Glenn Greenwald, and some of these really good investigative reporters that know that can give you information, you know, and then we can also disseminate it and talk about it, you know, like you do on your show, Sabby. So, and you've been on Katie Halper, right?
I have not.
Oh, you haven't? I thought you had. Okay, I'm sorry. I know she knows of you because she's mentioned your show. So.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's mentioned. That's why I thought you were on it. So I will. I'll nudge her a little and say, "Hey, you should have Sabrina on." So.
And this is a time where I think a lot of us need to come together. You know, we're really divided on the left for different reasons. There were the mandates. Some people were divided over that. Some people were divided over the trucker convoy. And honestly, some people are divided over podcasters too. And I'm sorry, but if censorship comes for one of us, they're coming for all of us.
Right now, you know what you just said is so important because I'm noticing a division in the anti-war movement. There were anti-war activists asking for a no-fly zone. They were asking, and I was like, do you understand what you're asking for? You're asking for an escalation of war. And I couldn't. And then the Guggenheim, the museum, the artists, they did a bunch of paper airplanes, and how irresponsible. Like, I guess what gets me is what I just want you to, before you virtue signal about something you're supposed to like and being told this is what celebrities like and this is what the mainstream media likes and this is the side we're on, like it's a football game. I want you to critically think and be objective, you know, listeners.
Agreed. And
because, you know, the truth is, I heard like some misinformation that they said 2% of the Ukrainian government was neo-Nazis. It's not infiltrated with Nazis. No, that's wrong. It's up to 14%. They're armed battalions.
Yep.
And they have slaughtered 14,000 Russian nationals in 8 years in the Donbass region. And that now at first, again, the mainstream media was denying that and saying it was Russian. Just now they're admitting it, because how do you deny 14,000 dead people? So anyway, I just, my frustration is, you know, the censorship and not, you know, us really critically looking at such a serious issue as war. People are just like, well, I'm not going to have Russian salad dressing, you know, and it's like, what? I'm going to pour out vodka. And it's like, what are you doing? Xenophobia and bigotry is not going to help us.
No, it's not. And I just think that Jordan Sheraton actually brought this up. And I actually think this is a really good idea. I think when I look at platforms like TYT, for example, a lot of people may not know this, but TYT has their own channel on cable. They also have a channel on Roku, right?
Right. They do.
So Jordan recommended there should be one big network that has all the left independent media, like TYT. That's actually what, like, those of us at RBN, that's actually what we do. Like, we followed that model. But if you had a network that could be on cable television or even Roku, and you had everybody in left independent media, that's what we need. Because you really cannot rely on YouTube. And I keep telling people, one day you could wake up and my show could not be here. Right. So this is why I think, especially when it comes to this issue, whether you disagree with people or not, and we have our disagreements with each other,
right,
on this issue, everybody should come together.
Yeah, because censorship, it just means, like, you know, Matt Taibbi brought this up actually on a show, and it was really about COVID. He wasn't even talking about, it was before this happened. He said, we're not even allowed a conversation anymore. We're not even allowed a conversation anymore. And that's what this is doing. It's making it so that everyone feels shut down and even scared to speak out. You could be deplatformed. You could, you know, or just what happened, you know, to all of us that had some sort of connection to RT, suddenly losing your work all of a sudden. And, you know, again, very serious things are happening. I mean, you see today, McDonald's pulled out of Russia and closed down. Sephora, the cosmetics company, shut down out of Russia. I will not go there. All of this. And you see a bunch of celebrities doing fundraising and taking in Ukrainian refugees or talking about that. And what I want to say is, that's great. You want to help refugees from war who are dealing with the conflict, who are escaping, who are trying to be safe. That's wonderful. But what about the Yemeni children, the 10,000 Yemeni children that have been killed in the last 5 years? What about Afghanistan? Biden took away the aid. 1 million children are projected to be starved this year. Right as we speak, families are selling their children for food. That's what's happening in Afghanistan. It is awful. It is a crisis, a humanitarian crisis. What about Somalia? During the bombings that they were focused on Ukraine, the U.S. has been bombing Somalia.
Yep.
And, you know, Ethiopia, and then, of course, you have Syria. And I mean, like, there's so many. And I guess what I heard on the media, and I wanted to talk to you about this, Sabrina, that was really gross, was like one commentator said, well, they look like us and they have Netflix and they're not impoverished. Literally, that's what they said. So
I'm glad you brought up Somalia and Afghanistan, because I was talking about this the other day. I'm like, I saw SNL did a skit in support of, people in Ukraine. Okay, oh, yeah. I get it. But where's that same support for people in Somalia and Afghanistan? Like, for this just isn't right.
Palestinians. Yeah. But the outright racism is been like at play with some of the, like that reporter that got called out because he said they look like us.
Yep.
It was like, really? And he was blonde hair and blue eyed. So it's like, oh, I see. So that's how you have to look to get all the celebrities to rally around you. We got it. We got the message, right?
Do you think that, I don't know when this is all going to blow over, but when this all blows over, do you think that RT will be allowed to come back on?
Gosh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, for them to make a statement that it's permanently closed, that's not very hopeful. I don't know. I do know that, like, they're talking about, major media has been just brandishing about, like, and having all these generals on and hawks on. They're just talking about nuclear war. Like, I'm wondering if we're going to survive, frankly. I mean, I don't know. It's really sobering. And I feel like there's no grown-ups in the room. And I can tell you from working with some of the people that are still with Biden, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. These are not people you want to be making these decisions because they don't care.
No, they don't.
And they're in a bubble, and there's even people that think there can be a limited nuclear war. That is insane. That is insane. And I just hope that there's some sane person that we haven't met, that we don't know, that's in the administration that will step up and say, stop it. But I think as citizens, we have to do that, so we can only do our best. Raise each other, like you're saying, try to unite, try to get on Roku. I don't know how to do that, but
yeah, it's going to get to the point where we're only allowed to say certain things, regardless of the platform. Like, I know people that have been, deplatformed on Facebook, Twitter. So many people have had their accounts like suspended on Twitter. It's absolutely ridiculous. But this is the time that we're living in. And this is why when Twitter removed Trump and so many people were happy, and I'm like, no, like this, whether you like what he has to say or not, do you think they're just going to come after people on the right? No.
Well, and then this is where it gets tricky, because you don't want hate speech, right? You don't want, like, I've seen, and this is like these people with Ukrainian flags, they're literally putting up pictures of Nazis, neo-Nazis, with the insignia. And like a picture, like what's interesting is PBS did this interview with a mayor in a town in Ukraine that was getting, and he was talking about the dire circumstances they were in and what they're going through. And in the background of his office, they blurred the picture. It was Banderas. It was a person who was responsible for literally shipping Jews to Auschwitz. He literally was part of that Nazi regime. Like that's the picture this guy has. Like, this isn't 2% of the Ukrainian government. This is a very active, almost 14%, I'd say. The numbers are between 8 and 14. And a really good documentary, if people want to learn about Ukraine, is by Igor Lopotonik and Oliver Stone. It's called Ukraine Rising, Ukraine on Fire. That will really show you the Maidan in 2014, how America was involved with that. Look up WikiLeaks from that time and Victoria Nuland. Reuters had an article about it and the audio of our involvement. And educate yourself. I think that's the best thing listeners can do, or viewers can do, is to educate rather than just being fed CNN.
Right. And that's the scary part too. And like I've gotten my parents like off of that train because my parents used to only consume CNN or MSNBC.
Right.
Now they know differently and they do differently. But this
Yeah.
is why I tell people, those of you watching, like you need to really encourage like your friends and family members to watch independent media. And not because we need the support per se, but because it's the message that they need to hear.
Yeah, we can lift up others, like other investigative reporters, like what you're doing with, with your channel, and other voices like mine. And, Lee Camp's a good one to follow. Like I said, Jackson Hinkle, Caleb Maupin, all of these people are good to explore. Samira Khan, and Abby Martin, Glenn Greenwald, as I mentioned. But, and explore. And like, you might not agree with every single thing. It's just like, I see certain, Jimmy Dore, for instance, like there's things I agree with him about and things I don't, but I still think it's valuable. And if I don't want to listen to him, I won't listen. Yep. Same thing with, any of them, right? Or myself. Like, you don't have to censor, you just turn off. Like you don't watch that particular show.
Exactly. That's kind of how I look at it too. It's just like, I got to tell you, Caleb Maupin has been on here a couple of times, and I swear he is like a walking encyclopedia.
He is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
he knows like a lot of information. And had it not been for independent media, I don't know that I would know about Caleb Maupin. Like, there's a lot of voices that you need to hear from, especially people who are the investigative reporters. They're on the ground. Like Aaron Mate has been in Syria. Like Max Blumenthal, I think Max Blumenthal is in Ukraine right now, or Russia or Ukraine. I have to double check, but I know he was overseas as well. Like, this is hard work. Like, that's not something that's easy to do. And how many times have we been lied to by CNN commentators and MSNBC commentators? I sat there and I listened to Brian Williams make up this story. And this was years ago, but I still remember this. Make up this story about how he was on the ground at war. And then it came back later on to reveal that that was not true. And then he had to come and publicly apologize, but he still got to keep his job. Yep.
And then, what just happened just about the Ukrainian conflict was they had this thing on Seal Island or something where all the people died supposedly and told the Russian army to, flip off. That wasn't true. Right. And then the Ghost of Kiev wasn't true. It was based on a video game or something, some nonsense. The New York Times posted a story to justify it, saying, well, it wasn't true, after they had printed these stories, right, and mainstream media, and said maybe it wasn't true, but it lifted morale. How? And they just did that the other day. How are we as consumers of media supposed to trust if you're giving us fiction? We don't want pretty fiction. We want the truth, what's happening. But,
Exactly.
It's unbelievable. And I think that this whole thing today, cutting off the Russian oil for Joe Biden's administration, chef's kiss. Democrats are done.
Oh, yes. Yes. Even people I know that voted for Biden that are, true blue, diehard Democrats, even some of them are not happy. It just, I'm not
Republican, and I don't like one thing that Donald Trump, most things that ever came out of his mouth, but he didn't get us into this, and he didn't almost get us into a world war. And they kept saying he would. And I kept saying, like, you don't understand, Biden wants a war with Russia. The people around him wanted this war. Blinken, Newland. I mean, you have it's like the Darth Vader of diplomacy teams.
Yep.
You can almost hear the Empire music going in the background when they walk in. Like, it's horrible. Like, we are literally watching the death of our of the Western Empire. Because this is a thing. And this is what Vladimir Putin talked about. And Caleb has talked about this too. He talked about the unipolar world that the West was trying to create economically and everything else. And he was saying we need a multipolar world. We need balance. I think that's kind of reasonable, personally, because China is an economic force, whether we like it or not. So is South Africa. It's an emerging economy. So is Russia. So why don't we participate as partners and cooperate and do innovation and make everybody's lives better and lift everyone up? What are we doing? What are we doing?
I agree 100%. Well, Tara, where can people find you now?
Odyssey, I'm going to start uploading. I'm up there, so that'll take a day or so. I'm on YouTube for now. I'm on Twitter at Reade Alexandra. And, you know, look for me on Telegram as well. So, and then I'll leave breadcrumbs if we get cut off. You know. So, and I know you were going to talk about the Bill Cosby thing, and I just wanted, before we move on, I wanted to make a comment about that, because I had talked to, actually I had done I talked to one of the survivors, and I had done an op-ed piece for RT about it. RT was the only one that would do the op-ed about Bill Cosby. And I wrote just how horrible it is. I mean, those victims thought they had or survivors thought they had justice. And then to see them released, I can't imagine their pain. And now the Supreme Court decision came out and put a pin in that. And I feel for because they went through hell. They went through a lot of doxing and hostility that I went through, because when there's a beloved abuser who's very famous, his fans come after you. Like Biden's fans came after me, although most of his were paid for. Cosby's case, he was like America's dad. That's how he was viewed. So these poor women, and I talked to 2 of the survivors. I mean, they were just dragged through it for years. And so my heart is with them.
Well said. Well, Tara, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you soon. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.